Hi, it's Woody Huffines with NerdsToGo in McKinney and Frisco, Texas with your nerd nugget of knowledge for today. And today's nerd nugget is ransomware is bad and it's going to get worse. First of all, what is ransomware? Ransomware is when an internet bad guy puts a program on your computer that encrypts your user files. It makes them unavailable to you with using strong encryption. So the bad guy comes in and encrypts your file, say customerlist.doc, and changes the file extension or adds a file extension to say customerlist.doc.ha or something else that passes for humor in the ransomware world, so that you can see your files there because they've got that extension on them, but the original file gets deleted. So all you're left with is encrypted data. So you can't get to your data, even though it's still on your computer, without paying the ransomware. And they pop up a screen on your computer that says, you've been attacked by ransomware, pay us some amount of money. Now, how did we get to where this is such a bad deal? Well, there's a confluence of several things going on here. The first is that all of our computers are connected. They're connected inside our home and they're connected to the internet, so that your home or small business is connected, and it's a 24/7 connection with cable and internet connections now. It's not dial-up the way it used to be when I was a wee computer lad. So the computers are connected. The second piece of this that's kind of grown up around this is cryptography. Back in the day, cryptography was the purview of the CIA or the NSA, but with the advent of e-commerce on the web, a lot of people had to get smart about encryption so that we could carry on the transfer of personal information and credit card information over the internet securely. So cryptography, which has become something that a lot of people deal with and a lot of people are able to do. So they have the encryption capability to go encrypt those files. The next thing has been the arc of development, for lack of a better term. Ransomware is at the end of a long chain of development. Viruses used to be just kind of a pain. They really didn't do anything. There were some viruses that would delete data, but at the end of the day, they were just resource hogs. At some point, people figured out that they could use botnets and malware on your computer to send emails so that they could spam and sell Viagra or whatever it is that they were trying to sell. Not a great economic model because you have to send out a lot of emails to get any money out of it. There's also distributed denial of service attacks where they would try to ransom a website by saying, if we use our botnet to attack your website, we can take you offline, and if you don't pay us money, we'll take you offline and destroy your ability to do e-commerce. That didn't work out so well because at the end of the day, you had to send money to them if you agreed to that ransom. And it was either a Western Union wire or write them a check or a wire transfer or something that was traceable. So it wasn't real popular because a lot of times the law enforcement folks would show up at the bad guy's place about the same time the money did. And that brings us to the last thing that has allowed this to be a problem, which is cryptocurrency. Before Bitcoin, there wasn't a secure, safe, untraceable way to send money, or not, at least not easily. Now, with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency, it's very easy to send money securely and anonymously to the bad guys. So all these things come together. You've got connected machines, you've got advances in encryption, you've got cryptocurrency as a method of exchange, and those things come together now so that ransomware, as it exists now, is a viable business model for the bad guys. Now, how is it a viable business model? Well, most ransomware attacks, at least the ones that are well publicized, have three main targets. And those targets are municipalities, educational institutions, and hospitals. Those are the top three of the things that get taken over by ransomware. And why is that? Well, they are a public service so that you have a stakeholder community that's very interested in being able to use the services of that of the town, for example. Some of the towns have lost the ability to do electronic dispatch. The state of Georgia, the Highway Patrol couldn't check license plates, and so there's public safety at risk in municipalities, as well as the municipality may not be able to collect their water bills. So you have a public stakeholder in a high impact environment The same is true of schools and to a lesser extent, but also true of hospitals. The next thing is that those entities usually have insurance. So if the insurance is available, it's a way for them to pay that ransomware. In one recent case, the ransomware got negotiated down to $100,000. The insurance company paid $90,000 of it and the town $10,000 of it. So does the town really want to spend $200,000 on IT infrastructure when even if they get attacked by ransomware, they can get their data back for $10,000? It's an economic disincentive. And finally, a lot of those entities don't have the money, the time, or the resources to do IT security, which is hard the right way. Now let's add another piece to this. Because small businesses, small medium businesses, municipalities, there's a significant portion of the internet using population that doesn't have the resources to provide internal IT resources. If you've got between 0 and say 50 computers, it's really tough to have the money to go out and hire an entire IT infrastructure. So most towns, most educational facilities outsource a good bit of their IT, and they outsource it to somebody that's called a managed service provider or an MSP. The MSP manages their computers remotely. They're able to remote in, make sure they're updated, update their antivirus, find computer problems. Well, what the bad guys have figured out is that if they can hack an ISP, instead of getting one business, they might be able to get 50. Or in the case of a recent internet attack, they figured out that they could hack a dental records management service and take 400 dentists offline. So if you attack one target successfully and you get the ransomware on the servers for an MSP, and then the MSP pushes that ransomware out to 400 dentists, and you ask for $5,000 per dentist, while it's not a huge amount of money for each dentist, in total it adds up to $2 million. So there's a huge economic incentive for the attacker to start attacking MSPs. That happened in the case of the dental records company. It also happened in the case of 22 municipalities and towns in Texas. The MSP was attacked. The MSP then pushed the ransomware out. At least that's the way it looks at the moment. So as a business model, it's working really well from the ransomware guy's perspective because he can attack multiple computers. It's like a force multiplier. I take down the MSP, I can attack lots and lots of computers for the same effort and potentially increase the amount of ransom that I'm able to collect exponentially because I've attacked a lot of people, and a lot of them may even have insurance that's going to give them an incentive to go ahead and pay. All of which is why I say that although ransomware is bad, ransomware is going to get worse because those economics don't change easily. All of the things that we've talked about, the confluence of things that make the threat real, and the fact that it's a really good business model for the ransomware guys means that more and more people are going to get into the game. In fact, there's one group now that's selling ransomware as a service. One of the things that you may be familiar with is software as a service, where, for example, in NerdsToGo space, we use a work management tool that's software that comes over the internet, and that's a software as a service. I don't have the software on my machine, I use it on the web. Well, these guys have now come out with ransomware as a service. If you have a network that you've hacked, you can contract with them to use their ransomware to attack that network. And then they share the money with you since they wrote the software and it's a ransomware as a service. The first 3 attacks that you make, you get 60% of the money, but after you've proved your chops, as it were, to the ransomware writers, then you get 70% of the money. Economic incentive. So, all of this economic incentive, again, has pointed up to where we have reached a point where that is a really good business model for bad guys. It's very hard to catch them, and it's impossible to track the money. So let's take a time out here and let me tell you that if this kind of information is valuable to you, I'd appreciate if you subscribe, ring the notification bell to see more of this content as we produce it, because we'll continue to talk about this computer stuff. How do you avoid a ransomware attack? Well, if you can't avoid an attack, the first line of defense is to have good backups, and they have to be cold backups, or what we call cold backups, ones that aren't connected to your network. If you get ransomware on your network and your backup is connected to your network, there's a pretty good chance they're going to encrypt your backup as well as your original files, which doesn't do you any good in terms of restoring your data. The next thing is use long, strong, secure passwords. Your passwords need to be 12, 14 characters long, upper, lower case, number, special characters, so that you don't get a brute force attack. Increasingly, ransomware attacks are coming through just brute force attacks of guessing passwords, especially passwords that are commonly used, like password and password one. The next thing is, don't reuse your passwords. Each web resource or account should have its own unique password. So if the passwords from one account get out, the bad guys can't take that list of passwords and use it against other things where you can authenticate to. Next, use a password manager. It manages these long, complex passwords so that you can use them across multiple various sites and always have your password remembered whether you remember it or not, as well as most password managers have the ability to create long, cryptographically secure, cryptographically random passwords. As I mentioned before, LastPass is my favorite. It's just my favorite. And finally, use multi-factor authentication. Have that second factor of authentication. So even if your password gets out, or even if they brute force your password, they still need an additional factor of authentication. Either an authenticator, a dongle, something that gives you another line of defense from that password attack and that ransomware attack. If you have any questions about this, leave a comment below and we'll try to get back to them. I'm Woody Huffines with NerdsToGo in McKinney and Frisco, Texas.